What is the difference between DBMS and RDBMS? This is a very basic question, and if we see the diagram here, DBMS store data as files. For example, here we are storing data in XML files. Different data is stored in different files and there is no relationship maintained between these files, okay? But as you can see, in case of RDBMS, data is stored in tabular format, okay? Relationship is also maintained between the tables. Now let's check out the differences one by one. First is DBMS stores data as files, okay? RDBMS store data in tabular format. Second difference is in DBMS there is no relationship between data, but in RDBMS data is stored in the form of tables which can be related to each other. Example with foreign key relationship. Third difference is in DBMS normalization is not present, but in RDBMS normalization is present. Then DBMS deals with a small quantity of data, okay? It's not good to put big data in normal DBMS, but RDBMS deals with a large amount of data. Then next difference is DBMS example is XML. Yes, you can save the data in XML files. And RDBMS example is MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, Microsoft Access. So basically mostly we work with RDBMS only. All these are the relational database management systems. Got it? What is a constraint in SQL? What are the types of constraints? Okay, this is an important question. In simple English, SQL constraints are used to specify the rules of the data in a table. In other words, constraints are used to limit the type of data that can go inside the table. For example, if you will try to enter a null value in a not null column, then it will not allow and give an error because not null is a rule. It's a constraint for that column, right? Now let's see the types of constraints. See, here we are creating a students table and applying all the types of constraints in it, okay? First is a primary key constraint. Primary key is a field which can uniquely identify each row in a table. That means duplication values in single column are not allowed in primary key. It's like the ID, the identification of the row. Primary key will also create clustered index on that column also, right? Second is not null constraint. Not null constraint tells that we cannot store a null value in this column. Third is foreign key constraint. Foreign key is a field which can uniquely identify each row in another table. Basically, it is needed to set relationship between the two tables. For example, here column course ID is just the ID of the course in this table. But all the details of that course against this course ID are originally present in this courses table. Okay, so this is the relationship between this courses and this table. Then next constraint is check constraint. Check constraint helps to validate the values of a column to meet a particular condition. For example, in this case, you cannot insert the age which is less than 18, right? The age must be greater than 18 and that is the check. This is the role of the check constraint. Next is default constraint, which is specify a default value for the column when no value is specified by the user. So it's like if you will insert a row in this table without the admission date, then it will automatically save the admission date by using this default get date method. Okay. But if you will provide some admission date value while inserting the row, then it will ignore the default value. And the last one is unique constraint. Unique constraint tells that all the values in the column must be unique. There should be no value, like no two values, duplicate values are not allowed. Now it is a bit similar to primary key, but the differences we will cover in upcoming questions. Alright, now you know what are the types of constraints. What is the difference between primary key and unique key? Alright, simple question but asked in many interviews. First thing is primary key cannot accept null values, okay? Whereas unique key can accept only and only one null value. Remember, only one null value is allowed in unique key column. Second difference is, when you create a primary key, it will automatically create the clustered index for the column, whereas unique key will not create the clustered but the non-clustered index automatically for the column. Then the third difference is, only one primary key can be present in a table, not more than that. But more than one unique key can be present in a table. I hope these differences are easy to remember for you. What are triggers and the types of triggers? Let's see the definition first. Triggers are stored programs which are automatically executed or fired when some event like insert, delete or update will occur. So suppose you have, let me explain this with example. Suppose you have a table locations. Now whenever some data will be inserted or deleted or updated in locations table, then you want to keep the track of it. Okay, you want to track it, and therefore you created this location history table to record the update. So to record data in location history table, you will create a trigger like this. So trigger is used for tracking the delete. So if suppose you want to delete something from location, so you have to track that, okay, when the data is deleted, at what time it is deleted. So that kind of information can be put in the location history table. Now see this trigger, this tree update location this is the trigger name. Then location is the table name on which the trigger is created. Okay, meaning if any update query will be fired on this locations table, then this trigger will be fired. And what trigger will do? It will perform the logic present inside this trigger body. In this case, we will just inserting a new record in location history table. So that is the trigger. Mostly we use triggers for tracking the changes happening in our database table. Now next part is, how many types of triggers are there? This is the chart of types of triggers. Remember, this DML, DDL and logon are the categories of triggers, but the actual types are instead of triggers and after triggers, etc. Like this one. I will only explain DML triggers, category triggers, because this DDL and logon triggers are mostly used by DBAs, and we already like saw here the after trigger. Now in after trigger, update on the table executed first and then after trigger will be fired. That is why its name is also after trigger. Now let's see the second DML trigger, which is instead of trigger. Instead of trigger are slightly different. First of all, you will use instead of a statement like this. See in the example, if anyone will try to insert data in this view employee details, then this instead of trigger will stop or forbid this insert execution. Okay, and instead it will execute some other command which can be written inside the logic here. For example, suppose there is a view which is just for read-only purpose, but now someone is trying to execute any insert query on that view. Then this trigger will not allow the insert query and will record this activity somewhere else for security purpose, right? So in short, this instead of trigger will help in security also. So at last, the definition is, an instead of trigger is a trigger that allows you to skip and insert, delete or update statement to a table or view and execute other statements defined in the trigger instead. Okay, I hope now you have a good understanding of triggers. What is a view? Let's try to understand with the help of a diagram. See, here we are joining two tables A and B with the help of a query and finally creating a new view like this. Remember, in case of view, only query is stored, but the actual data is never stored in memories like a table. Okay, so the definition of view we will look. It's a view is a virtual table, virtual table which consists of a subset of data contained in a single table or more than one table. So single table means view also can be created like by writing a query where only few columns are selected. This is how, okay, so for example, if you have a table and you want to create a view, only 3 columns in it, so you can create that with the single table. Now this is how we can create a view on the customers table. The view India customers will only contain customers whose country is equal to India. Now the question is, views are not stored in memory like tables, then why to use views? What are the advantages of views? First advantage is like table views can be indexed, okay, and indexed views can improve the performance in reading the data, right? Indexing improves the reading of the data, right? It will increase the speed. Second reason is extra security. Now what happened, DBA can hide the actual database table names and expose views for read operations only. Take for example, suppose there is a table which data is very confidential, okay, and therefore DBA do not want to share even the table name with the developers. Now what he will do, for that DBA will create a view on that table, and then he will give that view name to the developer, and developer can write query to read the data from the view. Okay, developer still don't know that actual table name. In that way table name remains confidential and secured. That is one of the purpose of the view. Okay, great. So now you know enough details about the views. Again, a very important question. So let's try to understand with the help of queries. Let's look at this query which having both where and having clause. Now see this query carefully. You will notice the first difference. Where clause is used before group by clause, okay, and having clause is used after group by clause, right? That is the first difference. Now see the next query. Now we know where clause cannot contain aggregate function. But if you see this query, then you will find that having clause can contain aggregate function like this. These are the differences between the where and the having clause. Now simple thing is, normally we use where clause with the select statements, but with group by we prefer having statements. What is subquery or nested query or inner query in SQL? First of all these three are same things. See this query carefully. This is the outer query, and here inside this an inner query is embedded in where clause. That's it. Now this where condition is dependent on the results of the office code this query will give. Okay, this query will give some result and like some set of numbers, and then where condition will check that whether that condition will match. Okay, so basically the definition is a subquery, inner query, nested query is a query within another SQL outer query and embedded within the where clause. Simple and sweet. What is auto increment and identity column in SQL Server? This is a very basic question. Let's see the example first. See here we are making this ID as the identity column of the employee table. So you need not to insert any value in this ID column. It will automatically start from the value 1, and if you have inserted 5 rows in the employee table, then every time you insert a new row like this, then the new value of ID will be incremented by 1 from the previous value. So like this 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, it will be incremented. So the definition is, auto increment allows a unique number to be generated automatically whenever a new record is inserted into a table, and mostly auto incremented is set on the primary key only. Okay, remember setting this 1 comma value for identity column is up to you. From what value you want to start and how much you want to increment on the previous value, that is up to you only. Now you know, since this identity column are always unique and not null, therefore mostly we mark them as primary key.